beautiful creatures of the world, and welcome back to Coffee with Kerri-Lynn. It's a beautiful day here in the far north of Maine, up along the Canadian border in the Crown of Maine, and I hope it's a beautiful day wherever you are as well. If you are joining me on YouTube or on Rumble, I do apologize for my appearance. I look like a Mack truck hit me, and right up until yesterday, that's exactly how I felt. If you are a blind viewer, an audio-only audience, try that 10 times fast, on my Spotify or my iHeart radio channels, I appreciate you for being here and listening to my extra tinny voice, and I am so grateful you cannot see the train wreck that I am right now. As my grandmother would say, Kerri-Lynn, you look like the wreck of the Hesperus. I look like something the cat dragged in. We have preschool grandchildren. We have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old. And you don't really know at that age when children are sick. They have much more to do than let you know that they don't feel good. They have alphabets to write. They have coloring books to color in. They have cars to play with on the floor. They themselves are nursing their baby dolls. So they don't have time to let you know that something might be wrong. You just kind of have to listen and look for the telltale signs, whether they're scratching their eyes or tugging at the ear, or they got a little bit of clearance in the throat, or maybe they're just coughing slightly too much, or they got boogers coming out of their nose. That's when you know. That's when you know you have been exposed to the contagion. And I was exposed to the contagion, and of course the cure was actually worse than the contagion, and that's just how my life has been. And here we are. My voice is a mess normally. So while I do apologize for how it sounds today, my voice was never radio material. But yet here I am, doing it nonetheless. I am from a very small town in Rhode Island, and I moved to Maine, and it messed up my dialect. But not only did I move to Maine once, I moved to Maine twice. We moved from Rhode Island to Maine, back to Rhode Island, back to Maine. I am from such a small town in Rhode Island. How small is your town in Rhode Island? My town is so small in Rhode Island where I was born and bred. It is a beautiful seaside town. It is Norman Rockwell picturesque. We lived 15 minutes from the big city, Providence. Although it only takes a half an hour to ride through the entire state of Rhode Island. We lived 15 minutes from Providence, and when I was a child, my grandparents would take me downtown to the big city, and it was a huge city to me. And we'd go to the outlet. Remember the outlet, guys? We'd go to the outlet to do our shopping, and it was such culture shock. There were so many people. Everything was huge. Everything was hustle, bustle, active, and it was absolutely a fascinating thing to go to Providence, Rhode Island when I was a child, and then back home to the very tiny town that I lived in. Our town in the 1800s used to be a whaling town. It was that beautiful, picturesque, villagey style town. My town was so small that I went to junior high in the high school my grandmother graduated from. I went to high school in the high school my dad graduated from. After I graduated 4 years later, they shut the high school down because there were no kids to attend high school. They had to make a regional high school because there was so few children. I think we graduated 65 in my class of 89. I think we graduated 65 kids in that class. My mom was from a bigger city. She was from East Providence, the Townies. And she graduated with, I do believe, 300 or 350 kids in her graduating class. It was like absolutely monstrously huge. So when she come to our graduation, she was like, where's the kids? They don't exist. That's how small of a small town that I grew up in. When we first met, my husband and I met 41 years ago. And his family moved from Maine when he was a kid to the town that I lived in. I lived upstairs, he lived downstairs. It was a little apartment house, cutesy tootsy little thing. And we grew up together. He was my high school sweetheart. We had babies. We got married in that order. And we decided that we wanted to raise the kids in Maine the way life should be. So we took our kids and we moved to Maine. And we stopped being self-employed. We were self-employed in Rhode Island. And we stopped being self-employed. And he got what my grandmother would call more secure work. I chuckle. So we moved to Central Maine, and he went to work at the mill where his family had worked at for many, many years. And then 10 years later, NAFTA happened. Look at that. We're not going to talk too much about NAFTA, but let me tell you, it was a lovely little town in Central Maine that we came from. We settled in, and there was a few hundred people that worked at the lumber mill, and the Canadians came in. They bought the mill strictly for the log procurement. The logs went to Maine, and we all went on the unemployment line. So back to self-employment, we moved back to Rhode Island with the children so that we could support our family. We were there for many, 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 many years. And then after the kids grew up and mostly graduated high school, we moved back to Maine, way up here in the far north of Maine, along the Canadian border where the cold hurts my face. And here we are. So my accent is just an absolute mess. And people ask me all the time, where are you from? I says, where you think I'm from? They say, you're from Jersey. Nope, that was my grandmother. She was the original Jersey girl. And then they say, you got to be from New York. And I say, nope. And they say, where are you from? And I say, from Rhode Island. They go, nah. I go, yeah. They go, nah. I go, yeah. And that's how it works. I'm a mess. And it's even worse because living up along the Canadian border, many, many people speak French. So, as luck would have it, I know all the bad words in Italian, and I sound like an Italian because I grew up in the Italian section of my hometown. I know all the bad words in Portuguese because I grew up with the Portuguese community as well, and I sound like I'm Portuguese. My mother-in-law is Portuguese. And now I'm here on the border of Canada. They all speak French. And I know all the dirty words in French as well, but I sound like I'm Frenglish. And they all laugh at me. I don't pronounce anything right. And, it's kind of a hoot. So that's where we're at. That's my voice. That's my accent. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Life is on, baby. 2 weeks before Christmas, and oh my gosh, everything falls apart 2 weeks before Christmas, doesn't it? It does it every year, never fails. There's always something going on and something you can't control, and the stress and the financial burden. And I know things are breaking the bank. I hear from everybody, whether it's friends, my adult children raising children. Times are tough, and I absolutely 100% understand. And the holidays should not break your bank. It really shouldn't. People are struggling. They're struggling to pay the car, to pay the utilities. They're struggling to pay the rent or the mortgage, insurance, you name it. They're struggling with it. It's just the gas in the car is just absolutely atrocious. And here come the holidays. Surprise, surprise. So where do we pull from? Where do we get that extra money from? Well, from time in memoriam, ladies and gentlemen, women pull the extra money off the food table. It's just how it is. If you take from the bill department, robbing Peter to pay Paul, then you don't have a phone, do you? But if you take and scrape from the table and you scrape from your grocery bill, you could scrape $15, $20 extra dollars, which could be a Christmas present for someone. You'll go without, but whatever. People have become accustomed to that because of the commercialization and the pressure of Christmas. And here on the Homestead, we do not succumb to that pressure. We stock our pantry year round. I grow my own protein and my own vegetables. We do buy from the grocery store quite often, and we make sure that we don't dip too low in anything in the pantry. It's always good to have a little extra. I do a lot of Christmas shopping on the clearance aisle in July. My kids make fun of me. Christmas in July. She's doing Christmas in July shopping again. But it works. Nobody knows if I got the gift on clearance for $2.50 in July or if I paid $15 in the middle of the Christmas season. The gift is the gift, and that is it. We take a lot of commercialization out of our holidays. We always have. It's always been a rule of mine that I put the spirit back into the holiday and we do not focus so much on the commercialization. Now, generally people gasp and recoil about this. Oh my gosh, what do you mean? You don't do Santa Claus? Of course we do Santa Claus. I make cookies for Santa every single year. My kids haven't lived at home for 9 years. I've made every single year cookies for Santa Claus. The commercialization I'm talking about is not, we don't strip the presents from under the tree. We don't put a lot of them under there, but we don't take them away from the kids. We never did. We always had nice holidays, but we always focused more on the spirit of giving, the spirit of the season. And I try to do a lot of homemade things around the holidays. This year, because of the grandbabies, they're just starting to understand Harry Potter a little bit. My children, the big children, the parents of the children, they understand Harry Potter. So this year, I incorporated a slightly new tradition to my holiday decorating. And that was, I did my kitchen with the floating candles from the dining room in Hogwarts. And around Halloween, we had the floating candles with floating pumpkins. And then at Thanksgiving, I took the pumpkins down and it was just the floating candles. And next week, we are putting up the floating snowflakes. So it's just a thing I do. Jazzing up for the holiday. I have 4 holiday trees. We have 4 Christmas trees. Overkill sometimes. We have the antique Christmas tree, which we decorate. Then we have the Christmas tree for the children that they decorate. And we do not move any of the decorations. We leave them right on the one branch that they all put it on. We have the Happy Witchmas tree. That's always a big go over. We put that up at Halloween and we just leave it up until after the New Year. I get all the holidays in there. And I have a festive little unicorn tree, which the babies absolutely adore. So that one's got to go up as well. Every room has a tree in it, and every tree has a different theme and a different expression. So that's part of what we do here on the homestead to incorporate holiday spirit. We have the children. They write letters to Santa Claus. I have a magic mailbox. And if you write Santa a letter and seal your envelope up and then give it a kiss and throw it in the mailbox, that letter goes directly to the North Pole to Santa Claus because Mima's got connections. She sure does. And, maybe if you're really good, Santa will send you something back. Maybe he'll send you a little letter back. So that's another small, cost-effective thing that we do around here, around the homestead. Another thing that I do as far as Christmas gifts go is I require everybody that comes to the house, including the babies, I require them to make a homemade something, a homemade gift for underneath my tree. And we do a good old-fashioned Yankee swap on the homestead. And that is done with the handmade items. Of course, everybody wants Mima's good old-fashioned Yankee swap because it's usually a hat or a scarf or some mittens or something I've knit up. And that's what we swap. We do the big old-fashioned Yankee swap. And I don't care if it's just a drawing that I can put in a little frame that the kids did. That's some of the way that we take the sting out of the pocketbooks. And, everybody has a talent. Everybody has a talent, so you can do anything. You can draw something. You can paint something. You can knit something, crochet something. I don't care what you do. You can take rocks and glue them to a piece of paper, and that is good enough for our Yankee swap around here. So that's always fun. It's always fun to see the creativity and what people have come up with for our Yankee swap. And another thing that I like to do is when people start learning how to cook, I like giving them instant cookie jars. I take a mason jar, 16-ounce mason jar, and I fill it with all the dry ingredients of a chocolate chip cookie or a sugar cookie if they're allergic to chocolate. So that mason jar is full of the dry ingredients, and all they need to do is take that mason jar home, add butter, add a couple eggs, start the oven, preheat it to 350 degrees, scoop your cookie dough on there, and you got it licked. You got it licked. So we've inspired many young people, many of my nieces and nephews, my young cousins. I have inspired them to begin cooking for themselves with the cookie jars that I make them. They always go over good. And it's to the point where my kids actually, they're like, I would like the chocolate chip cookie jar this year, Mom. So that's what I do. And everybody is happy with that. There's a lot of baking that goes on here on the homestead. Now, we do live OG. I'm a trad wife. I'm always cooking. We do not buy a lot of crap from the store. We are on the no sugar added lifestyle, which means I like to control when we do have sweets. I like to control what goes in my cooking. And I like to take as much sugar as I can out of my cooking. I add more natural sugars to it, whether it's maple syrup, a little bit of honey, extra bananas in the banana bread, and then you don't have to put no sugar in there. So it's actually really fantastic. If you're going to do blueberry muffins, throw a couple extra bananas into your blueberry muffin mix and take the sugar out of them, and you will have delicious, lovely, soft, palatable muffins. I promise you. You'll notice a difference, especially if you consume a lot of sugar. You will notice the difference, but it's not so bad that you don't want to eat the product at all. And because we do a lot of cooking around here, it's not a problem for me to whip up sugar cookies for Santa, where the kids take the dough, they cut the decoration out, they sprinkle all the little confections on it, and we throw it in the oven, and then we give them to Santa Claus and give Santa Claus some diabetes. It's terrible. Oh my gosh, it's so terrible. Generally, Santa loves them. So does the trash can. And that's how it goes. And we've been doing that forever. We do that whether the kids are with us or whether the kids are without us. We make cookies every single year for Santa Claus. Another thing that we do with all the bacon that goes on here is I do a lot of apple stuff. We do apple pie. We do apple fritters. We do apple crisp. So we sit everybody down to have the apple peeling competition. You have to peel the longest peel off your apple consecutively without it breaking. Then what I do is I take the apple peels and some wire that we get from the $1.25 store, and I put the wire through the apple peels, and then we hang them next to the wood stove for them to dry. And while they're drying out, you have the lovely smell of apples in your house. It's like a little potpourri, We also like to take oranges. Maybe I'll do that as a video on YouTube. We'll make the orange pomodors. You take your oranges, you take whole cloves, and you put your cloves into the oranges, and you make little designs, and then you hang them with a ribbon. And you also hang them by your wood stove, and you get lovely Christmas scent. Or you can put them in a bowl on your table if you don't have a wood stove. And it's just a lovely Christmas scent as they dry out. We also do simmer pots for the stove to get that festive Christmas feeling. And we all sit around and we put whatever we want. Star anise. We put some orange peels. We put some cinnamon sticks in a pot of water and we stick it on the stove. Some people like bay leaves and some people like to put juniper in. Some people like to go out on my pine trees and they like to cut the branches a little bit and get some pine needles and come in and throw them in a pot of water, and everything smells like Christmas. And those are just a few simple ways that you can really save on the holiday expense. You're together, you're as a family, you're doing all this, and you've got the Christmas spirit all around. This year, as with every year past, we're not big on the buy-in of the gifts. Everybody gets something that they want and something that they need. When I was a kid growing up, that's what it was. You got a couple toys that you wanted. I was a 70s kid. You got a couple toys that you wanted, but you were really, really happy with the new outfit, the new boots. You were happy with the new socks and underwears, and that was a big deal when I was a kid. That was more of a big deal to get the underoos than it was to get the actual Barbie doll that you wanted. And we kind of still do that around here. We focus on more so what people need as opposed to what people want. And that always goes well because it helps out my adult children. They can get a little more toys under the tree because they know that I'm going to do the actual boring clothing stuff that, that just doesn't thrill kids anymore. Some kids just aren't moved by the clothing like we were. I think we were more moved by the clothing when I was young because the house was kept at a very low temperature. I went through the gas crisis in the oil crisis in the 70s. And the house was always kept at a very put on a sweatshirt weather in your house. And that's just how it went. So we were pretty grateful for everything we got. But those were different times. So that's just a little few tips there that will make your Christmas a little more festive, a little less expensive, and these little activities, they really do bring everybody together to focus on the Christmas spirit. Now, we have a little special thing that we like to do on Christmas Day after the dinner table's cleared and dessert is about to be served. We like to carol around our Christmas table, and none of us can sing, but we are all musically inclined in one way or another. Everybody in my family plays instruments. So we sit around and we do some jamming and we do some singing and we just have a great time. And that tops off our Christmas Day activities. We do our big Christmas carol jam around the table and everybody participates. If you can't play an instrument, you are welcome to tap your hand on the table, clap your hands, or play the spoons if you want. It's always a rockin' and rollin' time here at the Homestead. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, beautiful creatures of the world, carpe diem, because no one promised you a tomorrow.